After I won an award at work, I invited my family to celebrate, but they all refused to come, saying it was just some silly work thing. I stood there in the hotel ballroom, champagne glass trembling in my hand, watching my phone screen light up with their dismissive text messages while 200 industry professionals applauded around me. My mother's response was particularly cutting. "Diana, we can't drop everything for every little achievement. Your brother Tyler has his tennis tournament this weekend." My father simply replied with a thumbs down emoji. My sister Vanessa didn't even bother responding until 3 days later with "LOL, congrats, I guess." The Executive Excellence Award I'd just received wasn't some participation trophy handed out at a company picnic. It was the highest honor in pharmaceutical research management, presented to only one person nationally each year. The award came with a $50,000 prize, recognition in every major industry publication, and an invitation to speak at next year's International Pharmaceutical Summit in Geneva. I had spent 7 years working 80-hour weeks, sacrificing relationships, social life, and countless family gatherings to reach this moment, and my family couldn't spare 3 hours on a Saturday evening to celebrate with me. I'm Diana Hartwell, 32 years old, and until that moment standing alone in that ballroom, I had convinced myself that my family's indifference was just their way of keeping me grounded. But as I looked around at colleagues celebrating with their proud families, hugging parents with tears in their eyes, I finally saw the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My family didn't keep me grounded. They kept me invisible. What they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to ask about or notice, was that I had been their safety net for the past 4 years. Every mortgage payment, every credit card bill, every expense they couldn't quite cover had been quietly handled by me. And that night, as I stood alone clutching an award they deemed unworthy of their time, I decided something had to change. Growing up in the Hartwell household meant understanding your place in the hierarchy. Tyler, my younger brother by 3 years, was the golden child. Athletic, charismatic, effortlessly popular. From the time he could walk, our parents structured their entire lives around his sports schedule. Soccer in fall, basketball in winter, tennis in spring and summer. Every weekend meant traveling to tournaments. Every dinner conversation revolved around his games, his coaches, his scholarship opportunities. Vanessa, my younger sister by 5 years, was the baby who could do no wrong. Pretty, social, always surrounded by friends. While Tyler earned praise for his achievements, Vanessa received adoration simply for existing. Our mother treated her like a living doll, constantly shopping for her, planning her outfits, living vicariously through her daughter's social life. Then there was me, the responsible one, the serious one, the one who didn't need attention or praise because I was naturally self-sufficient. That's what my father always said, as if being overlooked was somehow a compliment. I learned early that academic achievements earned brief acknowledgement at best. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, my parents attended the ceremony but left immediately after to drive Tyler to a tennis tournament 3 hours away. They missed the reception where I received 4 additional scholarships. When I graduated college summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry, my mother spent the entire day on the phone coordinating Vanessa's Sweet 16 party. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was above needing validation. I poured everything into my career, determined to prove that I didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. After college, I was accepted into a prestigious management training program at Morrison Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country. The program was brutally competitive, designed to identify and fast-track future executives. Out of 200 applicants, only 8 were selected. I was the youngest. The work was relentless. 18-hour days were standard. Weekends were luxuries I couldn't afford. I moved into a tiny studio apartment within walking distance of the office to save commuting time. While my college friends were getting married, traveling, building social lives, I was building something else. I was becoming invaluable. By 26, I'd been promoted to senior research coordinator. By 28, I was director of clinical operations. At 30, I became the youngest vice president in the company's 70-year history. The money came with the promotions. Suddenly, I was earning more in a month than my father made in 3. I bought a beautiful condo in the city, started building an investment portfolio, finally had the financial security I'd worked so hard to achieve. That's when my family's problems started becoming my problems. It began 4 years ago with a phone call from my mother. "Diana, honey, I need to talk to you about something." Her voice had that careful tone that meant she wanted something. "Your father and I are having some temporary cash flow issues. The business has been slow and we're a bit behind on the mortgage, just for a few months until things pick up. Could you possibly help us out? We'd pay you back, of course." My father owned a small contracting business that had been struggling for years. He was skilled at the work but terrible at managing money. My mother worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, but most of her paycheck went toward maintaining the lifestyle she insisted they needed to keep up appearances in their suburban neighborhood. "How much do you need?" I asked. "Well, we're 3 months behind, so about $9,000. I should have asked more questions. I should have established boundaries. Instead, I transferred the money that same day. "Thank you so much, sweetheart," my mother gushed. "We'll pay you back as soon as the next big job comes through." The next big job never came, or if it did, the money never materialized. 2 months later, another call. The car needed major repairs, $4,000. Then Vanessa needed money for college textbooks, $1,200. Then Tyler's tennis academy fees were due, $3,000. Then the property taxes were overdue, $7,000. Each time, my parents promised it was temporary. Each time, they assured me they'd pay me back. Each time, I told myself I was helping family, that this was what successful people did. They took care of their own. What I didn't realize until much later was that I wasn't being asked to help occasionally. I was being expected to provide constantly. By the second year, I had become their primary source of income. My father's business was barely functioning, but instead of closing it or finding other work, he kept it limping along, knowing I would cover the shortfall. My mother cut her hours at the dental office to part-time, then to fill in only, because why work full-time when Diana would handle the bills? Tyler graduated from college with a degree in sports management but couldn't find a job in his field. Rather than take whatever work he could get, he moved back home and spent his days training for tennis tournaments that offered small prize money he never won. My parents supported this fully, assuring him he just needed more time to break through. I supported it too, though not by choice, because I was paying for the household he lived in. Vanessa started college at an expensive private university, majoring in communications. She treated it like a 4-year social event, joining sororities, taking expensive spring break trips, shopping constantly for the perfect outfits to maintain her Instagram aesthetic. The tuition alone was $45,000 per year, but there were also housing costs, meal plans, activity fees, and the endless stream of emergencies that required immediate funds. I tried setting boundaries. I really did. Mom, I can't keep doing this, I said during one particularly exhausting phone call. I'm happy to help with real emergencies, but this has become unsustainable. Diana, we're family, she replied, her voice dripping with disappointment. When did you become so selfish? We raised you, sacrificed for you, and now that you're finally in a position to give back, you want to abandon us? The guilt worked. It always did. I kept paying. 4 years of this. 4 years of quietly transferring thousands of dollars every month while my own life remained on hold. I'd been dating someone seriously for the first time in years, but the relationship ended because I could never afford to travel or do anything that required significant money. All my income beyond basic living expenses went to my family. They knew I had a good job, but they had no idea exactly how good. I kept the details vague, partially out of modesty, but mostly because I feared if they knew my real salary, their demands would increase. The Executive Excellence Award nomination came as a shock. My boss, Richard Morrison, the CEO's son and head of research development, submitted my name without telling me. Diana, you've revolutionized our clinical trial processes, he explained when I expressed surprise. The efficiency improvements you've implemented have saved the company millions and accelerated drug development timelines. You deserve recognition. The nomination process was rigorous. I had to submit a portfolio documenting my achievements, undergo interviews with the selection committee, and present my work at a regional conference. When the call came that I'd been selected as a finalist, Richard insisted on taking me to lunch to celebrate. There are only 3 finalists nationwide, he said, grinning. Even making it this far is an incredible achievement. I called my mother to share the news. That's nice, dear, she said distractedly. Listen, I'm actually glad you called. Vanessa needs a new laptop for school. Her old one is running slowly, and she has important projects coming up. Could you send about $2,000? I sent the money. I always did. 3 weeks later, the announcement came. I had won. The award ceremony would be held in Chicago at the annual Pharmaceutical Leadership Summit, a black tie gala attended by industry leaders from around the world. Winners were invited to bring up to 4 guests. I immediately thought of my family. Despite everything, despite years of being overlooked and taken for granted, I wanted them there. I wanted them to see what I'd accomplished. I wanted them to understand that what I did mattered, that I had built something significant. I called my mother first. Mom, I have amazing news. I won the Executive Excellence Award. It's a really big deal in my industry. The ceremony is Saturday night in Chicago, and I'd love for you and Dad to come. The company is covering all travel and hotel expenses for my guests. There was a pause. This Saturday? Yes, this Saturday, the 23rd. Oh, Diana. Her tone shifted to that familiar, disappointed register. Tyler has his regional tennis tournament that weekend. It's a really important one. College scouts will be there. Tyler is 27 years old, Mom. He graduated college 5 years ago. What scouts? Professional scouts, she said defensively. This could be his big break. You know how hard he's been working. I've been working hard too, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This award is the highest honor in my field. I really want you there. I understand that, honey, but we've already committed to Tyler's tournament. We can celebrate your work thing another time. My work thing? The words stung more than they should have. Mom, this is the pinnacle of my career. The award comes with $50,000 and international recognition. That's wonderful, dear. I'm very proud. But family comes first, and Tyler needs us there. You understand. I understood perfectly. I understood that Tyler's 100th tennis tournament was more important than my once-in-a-lifetime achievement. I understood that my success would always be secondary to their priorities. I called my father next, hoping for a different response. He picked up on the 4th ring, crowd noise in the background. Diana, what's up? I'm at Tyler's practice match. I explained about the award, the ceremony, the invitation. Chicago this Saturday? He said. Can't do it, kiddo. Your mother and I are Tyler's biggest supporters. We can't miss his tournament. Send us pictures from your thing. My thing. Both of them had reduced years of work to your thing. I tried Vanessa last, though I knew better than to hope. She didn't answer, so I sent a detailed text explaining everything. Her response came 3 days later. LOL, congrats, I guess. Can't make it though. Have plans. She had plans. Tyler had a tournament. My parents had priorities, and none of those included me. The night of the ceremony arrived. I flew to Chicago alone, checked into the hotel alone, got ready in my room alone. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion, a midnight blue gown that I'd splurged on because I wanted to look the part. As I stood in front of the mirror, fastening my grandmother's pearl earrings, I felt a profound loneliness that had nothing to do with being physically alone. The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white linens and elaborate centerpieces, a stage with dramatic lighting. I found my assigned table near the front. The other two finalists were already seated with their families. Thomas Chen from Boston had his parents, wife, and 2 children. Maria Rodriguez from Seattle had her husband, mother, and 3 siblings. Everyone was laughing, taking photos, radiating pride and joy. I sat down at my table, the 4 empty seats beside me like accusatory witnesses. "Is your family running late?" asked Thomas's wife kindly, noticing the empty chairs. "They couldn't make it," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Prior commitments." She gave me a sympathetic smile but didn't push. Throughout dinner, I made polite conversation with the others at my table, but my eyes kept drifting to those empty chairs. I checked my phone repeatedly, some pathetic part of me hoping for a last-minute surprise, a message saying they'd changed their minds, that they were on their way. Nothing. The award presentations began after dinner. Thomas won in his category, and his family erupted in cheers and applause. His children held up a homemade banner they'd made. His mother was crying. When Maria won in her category, her siblings started chanting her name, and the entire ballroom joined in good-naturedly. Then came my category, Executive Leadership in Research Innovation. The presenter, a distinguished former CEO, began reading my achievements. This year's winner has transformed clinical trial processes, reducing drug development timelines by an average of 18 months while maintaining rigorous safety standards. Her innovative protocols have been adopted by pharmaceutical companies nationwide, potentially bringing life-saving medications to patients years earlier than previous methods allowed. As he continued describing my work, I felt a swell of emotion. This was real. This mattered. What I did had genuine impact, potentially saving lives, certainly improving outcomes for countless patients. My family's absence didn't change that. Please join me in congratulating this year's Executive Excellence Award winner, Diana Hartwell. The applause was thunderous. I walked to the stage, my legs feeling unsteady, and accepted the Crystal Award trophy from the presenter. Camera flashes created spots in my vision. As I stood at the podium looking out at 200 industry professionals giving me a standing ovation, I noticed Thomas's family still cheering, Maria's siblings still clapping enthusiastically, and I realized these strangers were celebrating me more than my own family ever had. I gave a brief acceptance speech I'd prepared, thanking my colleagues and mentors. I didn't mention family. When I returned to my table, holding my trophy and the ceremonial check for $50,000, that's when I pulled out my phone and saw their messages. "Mom, Diana, we can't drop everything for every little achievement. Tyler has his tennis tournament this weekend. Dad, Vanessa, LOL, congrats, I guess." I stood there reading those messages over and over. The weight of 4 years of financial support, 4 years of putting their needs before mine, 4 years of being taken for granted crystallizing into something sharp and clear in my chest. Around me, families were hugging their award winners, taking celebratory photos, making plans to continue the celebration at the hotel bar. I was alone with my achievement and my anger, and my phone full of dismissive messages from people I'd been supporting financially for years without their knowledge or appreciation. The flight back home the next morning felt different. I sat in first class, a upgrade I'd paid for myself as a small celebration, and stared out at the clouds below. The trophy sat in my lap, solid and heavy, proof that my work mattered even if my family didn't think so. I spent the flight doing mental calculations, something I'd been avoiding for years. Mortgage payments for my parents' house, $2,400 monthly for 48 months. That was $115,200. Property taxes, $14,000 over 4 years. Home repairs they couldn't afford, approximately $18,000. My father's business debts that I'd covered, $32,000. Car payments and repairs, $27,000. Medical bills for my mother's procedures, $11,000. Tyler's tennis academy fees, equipment, tournament travel, $45,000 over 4 years. Vanessa's college tuition, housing, meal plan, and endless emergencies, $186,000 over 3 years. The total made my stomach clench, $448,200. Nearly $500,000 over 4 years. I had given my family almost $500,000, and they couldn't spare one evening to celebrate the biggest achievement of my career. They didn't even know about most of the money. The mortgage payments went directly to the bank. The property taxes I paid online using their account information. Many of the other payments were handled so discreetly that they probably assumed their own accounts or credit cards were covering things. I had enabled them. I had made their financial irresponsibility invisible to them by silently fixing every problem before they even registered it as serious. And in doing so, I'd made myself invisible too. When I landed, I went straight to my condo. The space felt too quiet, too empty. I set the trophy on my mantle, but instead of pride, I felt a gnawing hollowness. I ordered takeout and spent the evening scrolling through social media, torturing myself with other people's happiness. That's when I saw Tyler's posts from his tournament. Picture after picture of him on the tennis court. My parents in the background of several shots, cheering from the stands. "Big day at regionals," his caption read. "Thanks to mom and dad for always having my back." Dozens of comments praising him, wishing him luck. My mother had commented, "So proud of our champion. Nothing is more important than supporting family. Nothing is more important than supporting family." I read that line 5 times, each time feeling angrier. I clicked over to Vanessa's profile. She'd posted a series of photos from some beach resort. Spring break vibes with my besties. The post was from yesterday, the same day as my award ceremony. She hadn't been too busy to attend my ceremony. She'd been at the beach with friends, a trip I'd probably indirectly funded through one of her countless emergency requests. I opened my banking app and looked at my transaction history. The most recent transfers to my family's stared back at me. $3,000 to my mother's account 2 weeks ago for unexpected home repairs. $1,500 to Vanessa's account 10 days ago for required textbooks. $1,200 to my father's business account last month for essential equipment. Essential equipment, required textbooks, unexpected repairs. How many of these necessities were actual emergencies versus manufactured crises designed to extract money from their reliable ATM daughter? My phone rang. My mother. I almost didn't answer, but habit won out. Diana, how was your ceremony? Her voice was artificially bright, the tone she used when she wanted something but was pretending otherwise. It was fine, I said flatly. I'm so glad. Your father and I felt terrible about missing it, but Tyler's tournament was wonderful. He made it to the semifinals. Can you believe it? We're thinking he might finally get some serious attention from sponsors. Tyler was 27 years old and had been chasing professional tennis sponsorships for 6 years. It wasn't going to happen, but I didn't say that. Instead, I asked, did you need something, Mom? Well, actually, yes. Your father's truck broke down again. The mechanic says it needs a new transmission, and you know how expensive those are. We're looking at about $4,000. I hate to ask, but could you help us out? Just until your father gets paid for the Henderson job. The Henderson job. I'd heard about various jobs my father was supposedly waiting to get paid for over the past 4 years. The money from these jobs never seemed to materialize, or if it did, it was immediately absorbed by some other crisis. Mom, when was the last time you paid me back for anything? Silence. Then carefully, Diana, we've discussed this. We're not in a position right now to pay you back, but we will eventually. You know we're good for it. $448,200. What? That's how much I've given you over the past 4 years. Mortgage, taxes, repairs, Tyler's tennis, Vanessa's college, Dad's business debts, medical bills, everything. $448,200. Another silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to defensive. That can't be right. We haven't asked for that much. I have the bank statements, Mom. Every transaction documented. Should I send them to you? Diana, I don't appreciate this tone. We're your family. Family helps each other. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. You don't get to throw that in our faces now that you're successful. I won an award that comes with $50,000 and international recognition, and you called it a silly work thing. You chose Tyler's 100th tennis tournament over the biggest moment of my career. Tyler's tournament was important. So was my ceremony, but I've always known that nothing I do will ever be as important to you as Tyler's sports or Vanessa's social life. I'm just the responsible one who doesn't need attention, right? The one who's supposed to quietly handle everything while you all live your lives. This is very hurtful, Diana. We've always been proud of you. No, Mom, you've always been comfortable with me. There's a difference. Pride requires actually showing up. If this is about the ceremony, we already explained that we had a conflict. You're being incredibly selfish and ungrateful right now. Ungrateful. That word landed like a slap. I need to go, I said. Wait, what about the truck? Your father really needs it for work. Figure it out yourself. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. In 32 years, I had never spoken to my mother that way. I had never refused a request. I had never pushed back. The guilt started creeping in immediately. That familiar feeling that I was being unreasonable, that I should apologize and send the money. Instead, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. I documented every single transfer, every payment, every loan that was never repaid. I included dates, amounts, and the stated reason for each request. The document grew to 12 pages. Seeing it all laid out like that, organized and irrefutable, triggered something in me. I drafted an email to my family, then I deleted it, then drafted another one, deleted that too. What did I actually want? An apology? Recognition? Repayment? I realized I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't keep doing this. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Mom said you were being weird about money. What's your problem? My problem? 4 years of financial support, and I was the one with the problem because I'd finally said no to one request. I didn't respond to Vanessa. Instead, I called my bank and scheduled an appointment for Monday morning. If I was going to establish boundaries, I needed to make sure those boundaries couldn't be easily crossed. I would need to close any accounts my family had access to or information about. That Sunday, I went into the office to catch up on work. The executive floor was empty, just security and the cleaning crew. I sat at my desk and finally let myself fully process what had happened. My family's rejection of my achievement, their casual dismissal of years of work, the dawning realization that I'd been funding their lifestyle while being treated as an afterthought. Richard Morrison appeared in my doorway around 3 that afternoon. Diana, I saw your car in the garage. Everything okay? I considered lying, but I was too exhausted. My family didn't come to the ceremony. They said it was just a silly work thing. They chose my brother's tennis tournament instead. Richard's expression shifted from concern to anger. That's unacceptable. That award represents the pinnacle of achievement in pharmaceutical research management. Diana, what you've accomplished is extraordinary. They don't see it that way. Then they're blind. He came into my office and sat in the chair across from my desk. Can I tell you something? When I submitted your nomination, the committee initially questioned your age. They said you couldn't possibly have the experience necessary for such recognition at 31. I had to fight to get them to actually review your work. Once they did, the decision was unanimous. You're not just good at what you do, Diana. You're revolutionary. The validation from him, someone who understood the industry and the significance of the award, made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. Thank you. Is there anything I can do? I shook my head. I just need to figure some things out. Family things. He nodded knowingly. Family can be the most complicated relationship of all. But remember, you don't owe anyone access to your success, especially people who can't be bothered to acknowledge it. After he left, I sat there thinking thinking about his words. You don't owe anyone access to your success. For years, I'd operated under the assumption that financial success meant an obligation to share it with family. But what about emotional success? What about respect, acknowledgement, basic human recognition? My phone had been buzzing periodically all day. I finally looked at the messages. Tyler, Dad's truck broke and you won't help? What's wrong with you? Vanessa, Mom is really upset. You need to apologize and send the money for Dad's truck. Dad, Diana, your mother is very hurt by how you spoke to her. This behavior is unacceptable. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family. That phrase had been weaponized against me for 4 years. It was the magic words that opened my wallet every single time. But as I read these messages, I noticed something interesting. Not one of them mentioned my award. Not one acknowledged the ceremony they'd missed. Not one asked how I was feeling. Every single message was about their needs, their wants, their disappointment in me for finally setting a boundary. I opened my photos and looked at the pictures from the ceremony. Me on stage accepting the award, me holding the trophy, me with Richard and other colleagues who'd come over to congratulate me afterward. In every photo, I was smiling, but my eyes looked sad. Even in my moment of triumph, I'd been grieving their absence. Then I opened Tyler's tournament photos. My parents beaming in the background, Tyler grinning at the camera, everyone looking genuinely happy to be there, celebrating something that happened every month but treating it like the event of the year. The contrast was brutal and clarifying. Monday morning, I went to the bank. I closed the checking account my mother had signature access to for emergencies. I changed all my account passwords and security questions. I removed my parents as beneficiaries on my accounts. I established new rules with my bank that no phone requests for information would be honored without in-person verification. Are you concerned about fraud? The bank manager asked delicately. I'm concerned about boundaries, I replied. That afternoon, my mother called again. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father called. Voicemail. Then Vanessa. Voicemail. Then all three of them in rapid succession. I turned off my phone. At 6 that evening, there was a knock on my condo door. I checked the video doorbell. My mother and father stood in the hallway, looking agitated. I considered not answering, but I knew this conversation was inevitable. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. How did you get past building security? We told them we were your parents, my mother said, as if this should override building policies. Diana, we need to talk about this situation. What situation? Your attitude, my father said gruffly. The disrespect you showed your mother. The refusal to help with a legitimate emergency. Dad's truck is not my emergency. He needs that truck for work, my mother insisted. You know his business depends on it. Then he should have maintained it properly. Or saved money for repairs? Or had a business plan that accounts for vehicle maintenance? None of that is my responsibility. My father's face reddened. When did you become so selfish? We raised you better than this. You raised me to be invisible, I said quietly. You raised me to believe that my achievements didn't matter unless they matched Tyler's sports or Vanessa's social life. You raised me to think I was the responsible one who didn't need acknowledgement or support. That's not fair, my mother protested. I won an award that represents the highest achievement in my entire field. I invited you to celebrate with me. You called it a silly work thing and chose Tyler's tennis tournament instead. How is that fair? Tyler's tournament was important to him, and my award was important to me. But you've never cared about what's important to me. You only care about what's important to you and what I can provide. My father stepped forward. Now you listen here. We're your parents. You owe us respect. I've given you respect for 32 years. I've also given you $448,200 over the past 4 years. What have you given me besides demands and disappointment? My mother's face paled. That number is exaggerated. I have bank statements proving every dollar. Would you like to see them? They exchanged glances. My father's bluster deflated slightly. We didn't ask for that much. You absolutely did. Mortgage payments, property taxes, medical bills, home repairs, Tyler's tennis expenses, Vanessa's college costs, Dad's business debts. It's all documented. We intended to pay you back, my mother said weakly. When? In 4 years, you haven't repaid a single dollar. You haven't even acknowledged most of the payments because I made them so quietly you didn't have to think about where the money was coming from. Family doesn't keep score, my father said. You're right. Family shouldn't have to keep score because family should show up for each other. But you didn't show up for me. Not at my ceremony. Not ever. So maybe we're not the kind of family that doesn't keep score. Maybe we're the kind where I'm an ATM and you're the account holders. How dare you speak to us like this? My father said, his voice rising. How dare you treat me like this? I replied, matching his volume. For 4 years. Do you know what I've sacrificed to keep supporting all of you? I broke up with someone I cared about because I couldn't afford to do anything beyond work and paying your bills. I haven't taken a real vacation in years. I drive a 5-year-old car while Vanessa posts pictures from beach resorts. I live in a 1-bedroom condo while you live in a 4-bedroom house that I've been paying the mortgage on. We didn't know, my mother said, tears starting. You didn't ask. You just took and assumed it would never end. So what? You're cutting us off? My father demanded. Over one missed event? I'm establishing boundaries. No more mortgage payments. No more bills. No more emergency funds. You're all adults. Figure it out yourselves. My mother's tears were flowing now. Diana, please. We can't afford the house without your help. We'll lose it. The guilt surged up. That familiar toxic feeling that I was being cruel, that I was abandoning them. But I forced myself to stay firm. Then downsize. Sell it and buy something you can actually afford. Get a job, Mom. An actual full-time job. Dad, close the business if it's not profitable and find employment elsewhere. Tyler needs to get a real job instead of chasing a tennis dream that isn't going to happen. Vanessa can transfer to a state school or take out loans like most students do. You're being incredibly selfish, my father said coldly. No, I'm being incredibly done. There's a difference. I stepped back and started closing the door. Wait, my mother called out. What about the truck? What about my award ceremony? She blinked, confused by the question. Exactly, I said, and closed the door. I heard them arguing in the hallway, their voices carrying through the door. My mother was crying. My father was angry. Eventually, their voices faded as they moved toward the elevators. I leaned against the closed door, my heart pounding, my hands shaking again. I'd done it. I'd actually set boundaries, and it felt terrible and liberating in equal measure. The week following my confrontation with my parents was eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. The silence felt both peaceful and unsettling, like the calm before a storm I knew was coming. I threw myself into work with renewed focus, grateful for the distraction that challenging projects provided. On Wednesday morning, I received an email from Richard Morrison with the subject line, Opportunity. He wanted to discuss an expansion of my role that would involve leading a new international division focused on accelerating drug trials across multiple countries. The position would come with a significant salary increase and require extensive travel to pharmaceutical research facilities worldwide. This would essentially create a new executive track within the company, Richard explained during our meeting. You'd be building something from the ground up, implementing your methodologies on a global scale. The board was incredibly impressed by your award and the recognition it brought to Morrison Pharmaceuticals. They want to capitalize on that momentum. The opportunity was exactly the kind of career advancement I'd dreamed about. It was also the kind of thing my family would find a way to diminish or ignore. But for the first time in years, I realized I didn't need their validation to feel proud of myself. I'm very interested, I told Richard. When would this start? We're thinking a 6-month transition period. You'd begin traveling to our international sites next month to assess current processes and build relationships with local teams. The official title and compensation package would take effect at the start of the new fiscal year. As I left his office, my phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Dad's truck is still broken. Mom is crying every day. Are you happy now? I stared at the message, feeling that familiar tug of guilt. Then I deleted it without responding. That evening, I met my college roommate Jessica for dinner. We'd stayed close over the years despite our different paths. She was a public defender, passionate about her work, and brutally honest in a way I desperately needed. So let me get this straight, Jessica said after I'd explained everything. You've been secretly funding your entire family's lifestyle for 4 years? They couldn't be bothered to attend your major award ceremony, and now they're mad at you for cutting them off? Essentially, yes. Diana, that's insane. That's legitimately crazy behavior on their part. She took a sip of wine, shaking her head. How much did you say again? $448,000. Jessica choked on her wine. I'm sorry, what? Almost $500,000? Diana, that's not helping family. That's enabling complete financial irresponsibility on a massive scale. I know that now. Do you? Because you look guilty as hell right now. Please tell me you're not considering going back to being their personal bank. I picked at my food. My mother said they'll lose the house without my help. Good! They should lose the house. They can't afford it. Diana, your family has been financially abusing you. That's what this is. Financial abuse. They've manipulated you into subsidizing their lifestyle while giving you nothing in return. Not even basic respect or acknowledgement. Hearing it stated so bluntly was jarring. Financial abuse seems extreme. Is it? They've isolated you from your own money, made you feel guilty for having boundaries, and convinced you that their needs are more important than your well-being. That's literally the definition of financial abuse in a family system. Jessica leaned forward. Tell me something. In the past 4 years, have they ever asked how you're doing? Not as a preface to asking for money, but genuinely asking about your life? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No. Have they celebrated any of your achievements? Not really. Have they supported you emotionally in any way? No. Then what exactly do you owe them? That question sat with me for days. What did I owe them? Yes, they'd raised me, but they'd also consistently shown me that I mattered less than my siblings. They'd taken my financial support for granted while giving nothing back. They'd dismissed my achievements and ignored my needs. On Friday, I received a certified letter from my father. Inside was a single page typed formally, almost like a business document. Diana, after much discussion, your mother and I have decided we can no longer have a relationship with someone who would abandon family in their time of need. Your selfishness and cruelty have shown us who you truly are. Unless you're willing to apologize and resume your previous support, we see no path forward. We have also advised Tyler and Vanessa to cease contact with you. You've made your choice. Now, live with it. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First shock, then hurt, then something unexpected. Relief. They'd made it easy. They'd drawn a line themselves, removed the burden of decision from me. If I wanted my family back, I just had to apologize and become their ATM again. If I wanted my self-respect and financial stability, I had to accept this estrangement. I chose myself. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went furniture shopping. My condo had been barely furnished, decorated with cheap pieces I'd grabbed quickly when I moved in, never bothering to create a real home because all my money went elsewhere. Now I wandered through high-end furniture stores, running my hands over leather sofas and solid wood tables, imagining what my space could actually look like if I invested in myself the way I'd been investing in my family. I bought a beautiful sectional sofa in charcoal gray, a dining table made of reclaimed wood that seated 6, a reading chair upholstered in soft velvet for the corner by my window, art for my walls from a local gallery, plants, real ones that required care and attention. I spent $12,000 in one weekend, and instead of guilt, I felt joy. These were things for me, chosen by me, paid for with money I'd earned. On Monday, the first piece of furniture arrived. The delivery guys hauled the sofa up to my condo, and I spent an hour arranging and rearranging it until it felt perfect. Then I sat on it in my own home, surrounded by the beginning of a space that reflected who I was rather than who I had to be for others. My phone rang. Tyler. I hesitated, then answered. Diana, what the hell? His voice was angry. Mom and Dad are talking about selling the house. Do you understand what that means? We'll have to move. I'll have to find somewhere else to live. You're 27 years old, Tyler. Most people your age don't live with their parents. I'm training. I can't afford rent and training expenses and tournament travel. Then get a job. I have a career. Tennis is my career. Tennis is your hobby. A career pays you money. You've been chasing professional tennis for 6 years, and you're not any closer to making it than you were when you started. At some point, you have to face reality. You're just jealous. He spat. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad support my dreams. I'm not jealous, Tyler. I'm exhausted. Do you have any idea how much money I've poured into this family? Into your tennis dreams? Into Vanessa's expensive college? Into keeping Mom and Dad's house from foreclosure? Silence. Then, what are you talking about? I've been paying the mortgage for 4 years. Property taxes, Dad's business debts, your tennis academy fees, almost $500,000 total. That's impossible. I have bank statements proving every transaction. You want to see them? More silence. When Tyler spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain. Nobody told me that, because I handled it quietly. I didn't want Mom and Dad to feel bad. I thought I was helping, but you all just took and never even said thank you because you didn't know there was anything to thank me for. And when I finally achieved something worth celebrating, something that actually matters in the real world, you all chose a tennis tournament over my award ceremony. I didn't know the award was such a big deal. You didn't ask. None of you asked. None of you have ever asked about my life or my work or what matters to me. You just assume I'll always be there, quietly fixing problems and funding lifestyles, never needing anything in return. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. So you're really cutting us off? Just like that? Just like that? Tyler, I gave you 4 years and almost $500,000. I gave you chances to show that you valued me as more than a wallet. You all failed spectacularly. We're family. Family shows up for each other. Family celebrates successes. Family doesn't dismiss someone's achievements as a silly work thing. You're related to me by blood, but you haven't acted like family in years. He hung up without responding. I sat on my new sofa looking around my increasingly beautiful condo and didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Every few days, one of them would reach out with a different approach. Vanessa tried guilt. Mom hasn't stopped crying since you abandoned us. My father tried anger. You're destroying this family. My mother tried manipulation. I'm worried about your mental health. This isn't like you. But I'd heard all these tactics before in different contexts. I'd been trained my entire life to respond to their emotional manipulation. The difference now was that I recognized it for what it was. Manipulation, control, attempts to restore a dynamic that benefited them at my expense. I blocked their numbers. Then I blocked them on social media. I changed my email address and didn't give them the new one. I informed building security that they were not to be allowed access under any circumstances. I created boundaries with walls instead of just lines in the sand. The guilt came in waves, especially late at night when I couldn't distract myself with work. But each time it threatened to overwhelm me, I reminded myself of that empty table at the award ceremony. Those 4 empty chairs beside me while strangers' families cheered for achievements they didn't even understand. I reminded myself that love without respect is worthless. That family who only values you for your money isn't really family at all. Jessica checked in regularly, reminding me that what I was feeling was normal. You're grieving, she explained over coffee one Saturday. You're not just losing your family. You're grieving the family you thought you had, the one you hoped they'd become. That's a legitimate loss, Diana, but it's also necessary. It doesn't feel necessary, it feels cruel. Necessary things often do. But look at you. You're glowing. When was the last time I saw you this relaxed? She was right. Despite the emotional turmoil, I was sleeping better, eating better. I'd joined a gym and started taking yoga classes. I'd reconnected with friends I'd drifted away from during my years of family financial servitude. I was building a life instead of just surviving one. At work, the International Division Project consumed my focus in the best possible way. I traveled to our facilities in Germany, Switzerland, and Japan, meeting researchers and evaluating processes. The work was challenging and engaging, requiring all my skills and pushing me to develop new ones. For the first time in my career, I wasn't working to escape my problems. I was working because I genuinely loved what I did. In Tokyo, I met Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, the lead researcher at our Japanese facility. He was brilliant, innovative, and genuinely excited about implementing my process improvements. Over dinner one evening, discussing workflow optimization, he asked about my background. I saw your award feature in Pharmaceutical Leadership Review, he said. Very impressive for someone your age. You must have sacrificed considerably to achieve so much. I did, I acknowledged, though not all sacrifices were worth it. The path to excellence rarely involves worthy sacrifices, he observed. We sacrifice comfort, ease, relationships. Sometimes we sacrifice things that shouldn't be sacrificed. The skill is learning which sacrifices serve our growth and which merely serve others' expectations. His words resonated deeply. I'd been sacrificing for others' expectations my entire life. My family's expectations that I'd quietly fund their lifestyle. Society's expectations that family always comes first. My own expectations that love and loyalty should be unconditional even when respect wasn't. What would happen if I only made sacrifices that served my own growth? When I returned from Japan 3 weeks later, I found a letter from a law firm in my mailbox. My stomach dropped. Were they suing me? For what? I opened it with shaking hands. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a letter informing me that my maternal grandmother, who I'd been close to as a child but had seen rarely in recent years, had passed away. She'd left me something in her will, and I needed to contact the executor. I called the number provided. The lawyer, a kind-sounding older man named Harold Chen, explained that my grandmother had left me her house, a small cottage in Vermont that she'd bought decades ago as a vacation property. She was very specific in her instructions, Harold said. The house goes to Diana, and only Diana. She added a codicil to her will 3 years ago, specifically stating that the property cannot be sold or transferred to any other family member for a period of 10 years. She wanted you to have a place that was entirely yours. 3 years ago, right around the time I'd started financially supporting my family, though I'd never told my grandmother about it. Had she known somehow? Had she seen something in me that prompted this unusual provision? There's also a letter, Harold continued. She left instructions that it should be given to you in person. Would you be available to meet this week? I met Harold at his office 2 days later. He handed me a thick manila envelope with my name written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a key and a letter. My dearest Diana, it began. If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. I hope I went peacefully and didn't cause too much fuss. I'm leaving you the Vermont house because you're the only one in the family who never asked me for anything. Your mother calls regularly asking for loans. Your father wanted me to invest in his business. Tyler wanted me to fund his tennis pursuits. Vanessa wants me to pay for her wedding someday. But you, my darling girl, you only ever called to ask how I was doing. You're the one who visited just to visit, not because you wanted something. In a family of takers, you're a giver. That's admirable, but also dangerous. Givers attract takers, and they'll drain you dry if you let them. This house is yours, a place where you don't have to give anything to anyone. A place where you can just be Diana, without the weight of everyone else's needs on your shoulders. Don't let them take this from you too. They'll try. Stand firm. You're stronger than you know, and you deserve a space that's entirely your own. All my love, Grandma Rose. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. She'd known. Somehow she'd known exactly what my life had become. The codicil preventing sale or transfer for 10 years meant my family couldn't pressure me to sell it and split the money. She'd protected me even after death. The weekend after receiving my grandmother's letter, I drove to Vermont to see the house. The journey took about 4 hours, winding through increasingly rural landscapes until I reached a small town nestled in the mountains. The address led me down a quiet road lined with maple trees to a charming cottage with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. It was perfect. Small but beautifully maintained, surrounded by woods that were just beginning to show their autumn colors. I used the key Harold had given me and stepped inside. The interior smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, large windows that flooded the space with natural light. Furniture covered in white sheets like ghosts of comfort waiting to be awakened. I pulled the sheets off slowly, revealing my grandmother's taste. A overstuffed reading chair by the fireplace, a dining table that could seat 4, bookshelves lining one entire wall, still filled with her collection of mysteries and poetry. In the bedroom, I found photo albums tucked into a dresser drawer. I sat on the bed and opened one. Pictures of my grandmother at various ages, her wedding photos, pictures of my mother as a child, and then photos I'd never seen before. Pictures of me as a toddler sitting on her lap, me at maybe 7 or 8, helping her garden, me as a teenager, the two of us laughing about something. She'd kept photos of me, arranged carefully in this album, separate from the family pictures downstairs. Under the album was another envelope with my name on it. I opened it with trembling hands. Diana, if you found this, it means you actually came to the house instead of just selling it sight unseen. Good girl. I have a confession. I knew what your parents were doing. Your mother calls me constantly asking for money, and she's not subtle about the fact that she's also asking you. 3 years ago, she let slip that you'd been helping with the mortgage. When I asked how long, she got defensive and changed the subject, which told me everything I needed to know. I wanted to intervene, to tell you to stop enabling them. But I know you. You're like me. We take care of people because that's who we are. The difference is, I learned to set boundaries before my family destroyed me financially and emotionally. You haven't learned that yet. Maybe by the time you read this, you have. I hope so. This house is my attempt to give you something they can't touch, can't guilt you into sharing, can't slowly absorb into their endless needs. It's small, but it's paid off. The property taxes are low. There's a fund I've established that will cover basic maintenance for the next 20 years. You don't have to do anything with it except know it's here, a place that's yours alone. Use it or don't, but know that it exists. A safety net that asks nothing of you. With all my love and hope for your happiness, Grandma Rose. I sat in that cottage bedroom and sobbed. Grief for my grandmother, yes, but also relief. Relief that someone had seen me, truly seen me, and understood what I needed even when I didn't understand it myself. She'd given me permission to stop being everyone's savior. She'd given me proof that I deserved something beautiful that I didn't have to share or justify or defend. I spent the rest of the weekend exploring the property, walking through the woods, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. The silence was profound. No phone calls demanding money, no texts filled with guilt trips, no family drama, just quiet and peace and possibility. On Sunday evening, as I was preparing to drive back to the city, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Diana, it's Tyler. I blocked your number. I know, I'm calling from a friend's phone. Please don't hang up. I waited, saying nothing. I got a job, he said quietly. A real job. Sales position at a sporting goods company. It's not glamorous, but it pays decent money with benefits. months. Okay, mom and dad are furious. They said I was giving up on my dreams, that I was disappointing them, that with just a little more time and support, I could still make it as a professional tennis player. And what do you think? A long pause. I think I've been living in a fantasy for 6 years. I think I've been letting mom and dad enable that fantasy because facing reality was too scary. I think I was 21 years old when I graduated college, and I'm 27 now, and I have nothing to show for those 6 years except participation trophies and debt. This was the most self-aware I'd ever heard my brother sound. What made you change your mind? I went to a tournament last month, regional level like always. I was sitting in the locker room before my match, and I looked around at the other players. They were all kids, 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. Actual prospects with actual futures in the sport. And there I was, 27, still pretending I belonged there. I lost in the first round to a 19-year-old who wasn't even ranked nationally. After the match, this kid comes up to me and says, "Good game, old-timer." Old-timer. I'm 27, and I'm the old-timer still clinging to a dream that everyone else can see is dead. I'm sorry, Tyler. Don't be. You tried to tell me. You've been subsidizing this delusion for years, and I didn't even know it. I didn't know because I never asked. None of us asked. We just took and assumed you were fine with it because you never said you weren't. I should have said something sooner. Maybe. But we should have noticed without you saying anything. That's what family is supposed to do, right? Notice when someone's struggling or sacrificing or hurting. We didn't notice because we didn't want to. It was easier to just let you handle everything. I felt tears building again. Why are you calling me Tyler? Because I owe you an apology. A real one, not one designed to get you to start paying bills again. You were right about all of it. The tennis dream that wasn't going to happen. The job I needed to get. The reality I needed to face. And I'm sorry I didn't see it until you cut us off. I'm sorry we treated your achievement like it didn't matter. I'm sorry for everything. Thank you, I managed to say. I'm not calling to ask you to come back or to resume supporting everyone. I think the separation is probably healthy. I'm calling because you deserve to hear someone in this family say they were wrong and you were right. So there it is. You were right and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. After we hung up, I sat in my grandmother's cottage feeling something unfamiliar. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of it. Tyler's apology didn't erase years of being overlooked and taken for granted, but it was acknowledgement. It was growth. It was something. I drove back to the city that night with a strange sense of peace. I had my condo that was becoming a real home. I had my grandmother's cottage as a refuge. I had a career that was flourishing beyond anything I'd imagined. I had friends who actually supported me. For the first time in years, my life felt like it belonged to me. That peace lasted exactly 3 days. On Wednesday evening, I returned home from work to find my mother sitting in the hallway outside my apartment door. She looked terrible. Thinner, older, her usual careful grooming replaced with an unkempt appearance that shocked me. "How did you get past security?" I asked, though I already knew. She'd probably told them some story about an emergency, guilted some young security guard into bending the rules. "Diana, please, I need to talk to you. We have nothing to discuss. Your father left me." The words hung in the air between us. I unlocked my door but didn't invite her in. "What?" "He left 2 weeks ago. Moved in with some woman from his business networking group. Apparently, they've been having an affair for months. He said he couldn't take the stress anymore, the financial pressure, my constant neediness. He said I'd turned into someone he didn't recognize. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction at this development, at the karma of my father abandoning my mother, the way they'd all abandoned me. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for the family we'd never really been. Sad for the dysfunction that had poisoned everything. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said carefully, "but I don't know what you want me to do about it. I need help. The house is in foreclosure. I can't afford it without your father's income, and without your support. I'm going to lose everything. Then sell it and downsize. It's my home. I've lived there for 30 years. A home you couldn't afford without my money. Mom, this isn't sustainable. It never was. You need to make choices based on your actual financial reality, not on the assumption that I'll keep rescuing you." She started crying, the ugly, desperate crying of someone whose life is falling apart. "I have nowhere to go. Vanessa is still in college. Tyler just started his job and can barely afford his own apartment. Your father won't return my calls. You're all I have left." The guilt surged up, powerful and familiar. This was my mother, crying in a hallway, her life in ruins. What kind of daughter turns her back on that? But then I remembered 4 empty chairs. I remembered silly work thing. I remembered years of being invisible, except when they needed money. I remembered my grandmother's letter warning me about exactly this moment. "Mom, I love you, but I can't save you from consequences you created. You and Dad made financial decisions without planning for sustainability. You enabled Tyler's tennis fantasy and Vanessa's expensive lifestyle without considering the cost. You built your lives on the assumption that I would always be there to catch you when you fell. That was unfair to me, and it prevented all of you from learning to be responsible for yourselves. So you're just going to watch me lose everything? Your own mother? I'm going to let you face reality. You have options. Sell the house and buy or rent something affordable. Get a full-time job instead of working part-time. Apply for assistance programs if you qualify. Stop expecting someone else to fix problems you created. I can't believe this. I can't believe my own daughter is this heartless. I'm not heartless, Mom. I'm just done being heartbroken by people who only love me for what I can provide." I stepped into my apartment and started to close the door. She grabbed the frame, desperation making her bold. "Fine. You want me to say it? You were right. We took advantage of you. We treated you terribly. We should have gone to your ceremony. We should have celebrated you. We should have appreciated everything you did for us. Is that what you want to hear? 3 months ago, yes. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. But now it just sounds like you're saying whatever you think will get me to write you a check. I mean mean it. You mean you're desperate. There's a difference. If Dad hadn't left, if the house wasn't in foreclosure, would you be here apologizing? Or would you still be dismissing my achievements and expecting me to fund your lifestyle? She couldn't answer. We both knew the truth. I have to go, I said gently. I hope you figure things out, Mom. I really do. But I can't be part of the solution anymore. I closed the door and locked it. I heard her crying in the hallway for several minutes before security finally came and escorted her out. I stood on the other side of that door, my hand pressed against the wood, tears running down my face, but I didn't open it. Later that night, I received an email from Vanessa. The subject line read, "How could you? Diana, Mom is devastated. She came to your apartment begging for help and you turned her away like she was nothing. Do you know she's been sleeping on friends' couches because she can't afford anywhere to stay? The house is being foreclosed on. Dad left her with nothing. And you, with all your money and your fancy job and your stupid award, you won't even help your own mother. I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new low. Tyler might have forgiven you, but I never will. You're dead to me. Don't ever contact me again." I read the email twice, then archived it without responding. Vanessa was still in her early 20s, still living in a bubble where someone else paid for everything, and consequences were abstract concepts. Maybe someday she'd understand, maybe not. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility to educate her about reality anymore. The following week brought another development. I received a call from Harold Chen, my grandmother's lawyer. "Diana, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your mother contacted me asking about the house in Vermont. She wanted to know if it could be sold and the proceeds divided among the family. I informed her of the codicil preventing sale or transfer for 10 years, and she became quite upset. She's threatening to challenge the will. Can she do that successfully? Unlikely. Your grandmother was very clear-headed when she made these arrangements, and I have extensive documentation of her mental competency. But she can certainly try, and it would be expensive and time-consuming for everyone involved. I wanted you to be prepared. Of course my mother would try to take the one thing my grandmother had specifically protected for me, the cottage that was supposed to be my refuge, my space, my inheritance from someone who actually cared about me as a person rather than as a resource. Let her try," I said, feeling a cold anger settle over me. "I'll fight it, whatever it costs." I was hoping you'd say that. Your grandmother would be proud. That weekend, I drove back to Vermont. I needed to see the cottage again, to remind myself what I was protecting. When I arrived, I found the property exactly as I'd left it. Peaceful, untouched, mine. I spent the day cleaning, removing dust covers, stocking the kitchen with basic supplies, making it functional rather than just preserved. As the sun set, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the woods darken around me. My phone was off, packed away inside. No one knew where I was. No one was making demands or expressing disappointment or asking for money. Just me and the quiet, and the house my grandmother had loved enough to protect for me. I understood then what she'd been trying to give me. Not just a house, but permission. Permission to choose myself. Permission to protect my peace. Permission to let my family face the consequences of their choices without guilt or obligation to rescue them. For the first time in my entire life, I felt truly free. The legal challenge from my mother lasted 3 months. 3 months of lawyers, depositions, and documentation. My mother claimed that my grandmother had been manipulated in her final years, that the codicil was added under duress, that the house should rightfully be sold and divided equally among all the grandchildren. She painted herself as a grieving daughter being denied her rightful inheritance by a granddaughter who had turned cold and mercenary. Harold Chen was magnificent. He produced medical records showing my grandmother's perfect mental health up until her death. He had dated notes from their meetings where she'd explicitly discussed her reasons for the codicil, reasons he'd carefully documented. He had recordings, legal and proper, of my grandmother stating clearly that she wanted Diana and only Diana to have the Vermont house because she's the only one who never asked me for anything. The judge dismissed my mother's challenge in under an hour. In his ruling, he noted that the grandmother's wishes were abundantly clear and well documented, and that adult children are not entitled to their parents' assets simply by virtue of existing. The case was closed, and my mother was ordered to pay court costs. I received the news while I was in Germany, overseeing the implementation of new clinical trial protocols at our Munich facility. Richard had called personally to congratulate me, having been kept informed of the situation. "That's twice now you've won something significant," he said. "The award and the house. You're on quite a streak." "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted. "It feels like surviving. Sometimes those are the same thing." He was right. I was surviving. More than that, I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. The international division was exceeding all projections. My methodologies were being adopted not just within Morrison Pharmaceuticals, but across the industry. I'd been invited to speak at conferences, to write articles for prestigious journals, to consult on projects that could genuinely change how quickly life-saving drugs reached patients. And through it all, I'd maintained my boundaries. No money to family, no rescue operations, no guilt-induced backsliding. It was hard, especially when Tyler would occasionally text me updates about how difficult things were for everyone, but I stayed firm. Tyler, to his credit, had stuck with his job. He'd been promoted twice in 6 months, showing a natural talent for sales that had been completely wasted on tennis courts. He'd moved into his own apartment, was dating someone seriously, and seemed to be building an actual adult life. We talked occasionally, carefully neutral conversations that avoided family drama and focused on our respective careers. It wasn't the close sibling relationship I'd once hoped for, but it was honest, which was better. Vanessa remained frozen in her anger. She'd transferred to a state school after the private university tuition became impossible without my support, and she blamed me for this perceived downgrade in her educational status. Her social media was filled with passive-aggressive posts about fake family and people who forget where they came from. I'd stopped looking months ago. My father had apparently moved to Florida with his girlfriend, leaving Connecticut entirely. Tyler mentioned that he'd completely abandoned any financial responsibility for my mother, focusing instead on starting over with someone new. My mother had eventually sold the house at a loss during foreclosure proceedings and moved into a small apartment in a less desirable area. She'd gotten a full-time job at a call center, work she considered beneath her, but that paid enough to cover her basic expenses. Part of me felt guilty about her circumstances. The daughter I used to be would have rushed in to help, to soften the landing, to make sure she didn't suffer too much. But the woman I'd become understood that suffering was sometimes the only teacher that actually got through to people. My mother had spent years living beyond her means and expecting others to cover the difference. Now she was learning to live within her actual means. It was a lesson she should have learned decades ago. 8 months after the award ceremony, I attended the International Pharmaceutical Summit in Geneva as the keynote speaker. The event was massive, attended by pharmaceutical executives, researchers, and government health officials from 70 different countries. I spoke about accelerating drug development without compromising safety, about the methodologies that had won me the Executive Excellence Award, about the future of global pharmaceutical research. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, I was swarmed by people wanting to discuss collaborations, partnerships, consulting opportunities. Richard found me in the crowd and pulled me aside, grinning widely. "Diana, I have news. The board voted unanimously this morning. They're creating a new C-suite position, Chief Global Innovation Officer. They want you. The compensation package is extraordinary, and you'd have autonomy to implement your vision across all international operations. A C-suite position at 32 years old. It was the kind of achievement that should have made me immediately call my family to share the news, but I didn't. Instead, I celebrated with colleagues who actually understood and appreciated what I'd accomplished. People who had watched me work, who respected my abilities, who valued me for reasons that had nothing to do with money. That night, alone in my hotel room overlooking Lake Geneva, I finally allowed myself to fully process everything that had happened over the past year. The award ceremony where my family didn't show up, the confrontation where I'd cut them off financially, the discovery of my grandmother's cottage and her protective love, the legal battle to keep what was rightfully mine, Tyler's genuine apology and subsequent growth, my mother's desperate attempts to manipulate me back into my old role, the professional success that had blossomed once I stopped pouring all my energy into managing my family's dysfunction. I'd lost my family, or at least the version of family I'd grown up with, but I'd gained myself. I'd gained peace, financial stability, career advancement beyond anything I'd dreamed possible, and self-respect that no one could take from me. The trade-off, painful as it had been, was worth it. My phone buzzed with a message. "Tyler, saw the announcement about your promotion. Mom sent it to me. Congratulations, Di. You've earned it." Then, surprisingly, another message from Tyler. "Mom asked me to tell you she's proud of you. She won't say it herself because she's stubborn, but I thought you should know." I stared at those messages for a long time. My mother was proud of me. The words I'd wanted to hear for so long, delivered secondhand through my brother after I no longer needed them. There was irony there, but also maybe the beginning of something. Not reconciliation exactly, but acknowledgement. She saw me now, even if she couldn't admit it directly. I didn't respond to Tyler's messages that night. I needed time to think about what, if anything, I wanted to do with that information. Instead, I opened my laptop and wrote an email to Harold Chen, my grandmother's lawyer. "Harold, I'd like to set up a trust fund in my grandmother's name, the Rose Hartwell Memorial Fund for Women in STEM. I want to provide scholarships for young women pursuing careers in pharmaceutical research, specifically those from financially disadvantaged backgrounds. I'm thinking an initial endowment of $200,000 with annual contributions as the fund grows. Can you help me structure this?" His response came within an hour. "Diana, Rose would be incredibly proud. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss the details." $200,000, less than half of what I'd given my family over 4 years, but this money would actually help people who needed it. Young women who wanted to pursue science careers but couldn't afford the education. Women like I might have been if I hadn't been lucky enough to get scholarships. This felt right in a way that paying my family's bills never had. The promotion to Chief Global Innovation Officer was announced publicly the following week. My LinkedIn profile exploded with congratulations from colleagues, former classmates, and industry contacts. Several news outlets covered the story, noting that I was one of the youngest C-suite executives in pharmaceutical industry history. Among the hundreds of messages, I found one from Vanessa. Just 3 words. "I'm sorry too." Not the eloquent apology I might have hoped for, but it was something. An acknowledgement that she'd been wrong, that her anger had been misplaced, that maybe she was beginning to understand the complexity of what had happened. I didn't respond immediately. I needed to think about what role, if any, I wanted my sister to have in my life going forward. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. My mother's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single page handwritten on plain stationery. "Diana, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I did to you. Losing the house, losing your father, having to work a job I hate just to afford a tiny apartment, these consequences have taught me more in 8 months than I learned in the previous 30 years. You were right about everything. We took advantage of you. We dismissed your achievements. We treated you like an ATM instead of a daughter. We prioritized Tyler's impossible dreams and Vanessa's expensive lifestyle over your legitimate needs. And when you finally set boundaries, we called you selfish selfish instead of looking at our own behavior. I'm working with a therapist now, trying to understand how I became someone who could treat her daughter that way. She's helping me see patterns I've been blind to my whole life. The favoritism, the manipulation, the entitlement. I'm not asking you to come back or to resume supporting me financially. I'm just asking you to know that I see now what I couldn't see before. You built something remarkable, and you did it despite us, not because of us. I'm proud of you. I should have said that a year ago at your ceremony. I should have been there. I'm sorry I wasn't. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I'll understand if you can't. Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It was the apology I'd needed a year ago, arriving exactly when I no longer desperately required it. But that timing, that distance, actually made it more meaningful. She wasn't apologizing to get something from me. She was apologizing because she'd finally done the work to understand what she'd done wrong. Forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't a switch that flipped instantly. It was a process, a slow thawing of frozen hurts. My mother's letter didn't immediately heal years of pain, but it cracked the ice. It created possibility where before there had been only solid cold. I didn't respond to the letter immediately. Instead, I focused on my new role, on the scholarship fund, on building the life I wanted rather than the life others expected of me. I continued traveling internationally, implementing innovations, speaking at conferences, and building a reputation based entirely on my own merits. 3 months after receiving my mother's letter, I drove to Vermont for a long weekend at my grandmother's cottage. I'd been making regular trips there, slowly turning it from a preserved memory into a living space. I'd added my own touches while keeping the essence of what my grandmother had created. A workspace where I could write articles and review research. A garden where I was learning to grow vegetables, a piece that I protected fiercely. On Saturday morning, I woke to find my phone had service for once, the signal patchy but present. There was a text from Tyler. Mom's birthday is next week. I'm taking her to dinner. No pressure, but you're invited if you want to come. Just the 3 of us. Vanessa is still working through her stuff. I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the morning mist rise off the trees, and thought about that invitation. Did I want to see my mother? Did I want to risk the peace I'd built by opening that door even slightly? Yes and no. Yes, because she was still my mother, and part of me still loved her despite everything. No, because I was terrified of falling back into old patterns, of being sucked back into dysfunction I'd worked so hard to escape. I texted Tyler back. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking, he responded. On the drive back to the city Sunday evening, I made a decision. I would go to the dinner, not because I owed it to anyone, but because I was curious about who my mother was becoming, about whether her apology had been genuine or performative. I would go with clear boundaries and the willingness to walk away if those boundaries were crossed. I would go as the woman I'd become, not the daughter I used to be. The restaurant Tyler chose was modest, a small Italian place in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the upscale establishments my mother used to insist on. I arrived exactly on time, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no longer dressing to impress or apologize for my success. Tyler was already there, and he stood to hug me when I approached the table. Thanks for coming, he said quietly. I know this isn't easy. Where's Mom? She's running a few minutes late. Her shift at work just ended. Her shift at work. The phrase still felt surreal. My mother, who had considered part-time receptionist work beneath her, now worked full-time at a call center and talked about shifts like it was normal. Maybe it was becoming normal for her. She arrived 10 minutes later, looking tired but cleaner than when I'd last seen her in my apartment hallway. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her clothes simple but appropriate. She'd lost weight, not in an unhealthy way, but in the way people do, when stress gives way to routine and structure. Diana, her voice was uncertain as she approached the table. Thank you for coming. Happy birthday, Mom. We sat, the 3 of us. An awkward triangle of family trying to figure out what we were to each other now. The waiter came and we ordered, filling the silence with mundane decisions about food and drink. When he left, the silence became unavoidable. How's work? Tyler asked me, always the peacemaker. Good. The international division is exceeding projections. We're implementing new protocols in 14 countries right now. I saw the article about you in Forbes, my mother said softly. Tyler showed it to me. They called you a revolutionary thinker in pharmaceutical development. That was generous of them. It wasn't generous. It was accurate. She looked directly at me for the first time. I've been reading about your work. Actually reading it, trying to understand what you do. I had no idea. All those years, I had no idea what you were accomplishing. You never asked. No, I didn't. She folded her hands on the table, and I noticed they looked older, the skin rougher, hands that worked now, that typed and answered phones and earned her own living. I'm not going to make excuses. I was selfish. I was entitled. I built my life around the assumption that someone would always rescue me from my poor choices. First your father, then you. I never had to face consequences, so I never learned to make better decisions. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Mom's been in therapy, he offered, really working on things. I am, she confirmed. It's been painful. Seeing yourself clearly after years of delusion is brutal, but necessary. My therapist helped me understand that I was repeating patterns from my own childhood. My mother favored my brother, just like I favored Tyler. I felt overlooked and unloved, just like I made you feel overlooked and unloved. I swore I'd never do to my children what was done to me, and then I did exactly that. The food arrived, giving us all a moment to process. I moved pasta around my plate, appetite gone, emotions too complicated to allow for eating. The night of your award ceremony, my mother continued, Tyler's tournament was genuinely important to him, but it wasn't more important than your achievement. It wasn't more important than you. I chose it because it was comfortable. I'd been choosing Tyler's tennis for years. It was familiar. Your success was intimidating. You'd become someone I didn't understand, someone whose accomplishments made me feel small and inadequate, so I diminished them. I called your award a silly work thing because if it wasn't important, I didn't have to feel guilty about missing it. That's remarkably honest, I said quietly. I've had 8 months of consequences to think about it. Losing my house, losing your father, losing you, working a job I hate to afford, an apartment I'm embarrassed to live in, watching Tyler build a real career while I'm starting over at 53. These aren't things that happened to me, Diana. These are things I created through my choices. Tyler spoke up. Mom wanted me to tell you that she's not asking for anything. No money, no help, nothing. She just wanted the chance to say she was sorry and to wish you well. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She'd aged in these months, but there was something different in her eyes. Not the desperate manipulation I'd seen in my apartment hallway. Something more solid. Acceptance, maybe. Or the beginning of wisdom that comes from hitting bottom and starting to climb back up. I forgive you, I said, surprising myself. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't, but because holding on to anger was poisoning me as much as your behavior poisoned our relationship. I forgive you, but I can't go back to how things were. I wouldn't want you to, she said quickly. How things were was toxic and unsustainable. I'm trying to build something different now, something real. What does that look like? Small, humble, honest. I work 40 hours a week at a job that pays my bills, but nothing extra. I live in an apartment that's 1/3 the size of the house I lost. I budget carefully and sometimes run out of money before I run out of month, but I'm paying my own way. For the first time in my adult life, I'm actually supporting myself without relying on someone else to catch me when I fall. I'm proud of you for that. Her eyes filled with tears. That means more than you know. We ate in more comfortable silence, the initial tension easing into something tentative but real. Tyler talked about his job, about his girlfriend Sarah, who worked in marketing and shared his newfound interest in financial responsibility. My mother listened, asking questions, showing genuine interest in his life beyond his tennis scores. What about Vanessa? I asked eventually. Tyler and my mother exchanged glances. She's struggling, Tyler admitted. She's angry at everyone, including herself. She had to drop out of school for a semester to work full-time and save money. She's planning to go back in the fall, but to a community college to get her basics done cheaper. She blames me, I said. She blamed you, my mother corrected, but she's starting to understand. She got her first paycheck from her retail job and realized how little 40 hours of minimum wage work actually pays. She's living with roommates in a tiny apartment, working retail, and facing the reality that the lifestyle she thought was normal was actually being subsidized by you. It's been humbling. Is she here tonight? She wasn't ready, Tyler said, but she asked me to give you this. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a card with a simple message in Vanessa's handwriting. I'm not ready to see you yet because I'm still ashamed of how I treated you, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm working on becoming someone who deserves to have you as a sister again. Give me time. Love, Vanessa. I felt tears building and carefully put the card away. Tell her I'll be here when she's ready. As dinner concluded, my mother reached across the table and took my hand. Hers was rougher now, the hands of someone who worked for a living, but the gesture was genuine. I know I can't undo the past, she said. I can't give you back the childhood you deserved, where your achievements were celebrated equally. I can't repay the money you gave us. I can't return the years you spent prioritizing our needs over your own, but I can promise to do better going forward. I can promise to be someone who shows up, who celebrates you, who values you for who you are instead of what you can provide. That's all I ever wanted, Mom. I know that now. We parted with careful hugs, testing the waters of physical affection after months of distance. Tyler walked me to my car while my mother waited by hers. This is good, he said. This is a start. It is. How are you really doing, Tyler? He smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way I hadn't seen in years. Honestly, I'm happy. Like, genuinely happy for the first time since college. I have a job I'm actually good at. I'm making money I earned myself. Sarah is amazing, and she doesn't care that I'm not a professional athlete. We're talking about moving in together, getting engaged maybe. I'm building a real life, Di. It's not the life I imagined when I was 21, but it's better because it's actually achievable. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too. Always have been. Even when I was too self-absorbed to say it. I drove home thinking about how much had changed in 1 year, how loss had led to gain in unexpected ways, how boundaries had created space for genuine relationships to develop, how stepping away from toxic dynamics had allowed everyone to grow into better versions of themselves. Over the following months, I saw my mother and Tyler occasionally, dinners every few weeks, never at my expense. Conversations that were honest instead of performative, a slow rebuilding of family connection based on mutual respect instead of financial dependence. My mother celebrated when I received recognition for my work. Tyler asked intelligent questions about my projects. They showed up, not perfectly, but genuinely. Vanessa reached out 6 months later, a tentative text asking if we could meet for coffee. I said yes. She arrived nervous, her appearance markedly different from her previous polished social media aesthetic. Less makeup, simpler clothes, a humility in her demeanor that replaced her former entitlement. I've been working on myself, she said after we ordered. Therapy. Like Mom, trying to understand why I was so angry at you when you were the one who had every right to be angry at us. What did you figure out? That I was ashamed. Deep down, I knew my lifestyle wasn't sustainable. I knew someone was paying for everything, but I didn't want to know who or how much. When you cut us off and everything fell apart, I had to face the fact that I'd been living a lie. That made me angry, and it was easier to be angry at you than at myself. And now I'm 22, working retail, going to community college, and learning to live within my means. It's humbling, it's hard, but it's honest. I'm becoming someone I can actually respect. We talked for 2 hours, carefully rebuilding a sister relationship that had never really existed before. Not the toxic dynamic of entitled younger sister and resentful older sister. sister, but something new. Two women finding common ground as adults. A year and a half after the award ceremony that changed everything, I returned to Vermont for Thanksgiving. Not to my mother's house, which no longer existed, but to my grandmother's cottage. I'd invited my family, uncertain if anyone would come. They all came. My mother brought a pie she'd made herself. Tyler and Sarah brought wine. Vanessa brought flowers from the grocery store where she now worked. We cooked together in the small kitchen, laughing when we bumped into each other, working as a team for perhaps the first time ever. After dinner, as we sat around the fireplace, my mother raised her glass. I'd like to propose a toast to Diana, whose courage to set boundaries saved this family by forcing us all to grow up. To Rose, who knew her granddaughter needed protection and provided it. And to second chances, earned through hard work and honest change. We clinked glasses, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not the desperate need for their approval, but genuine contentment in their company. We'd all lost things: the house, the illusions, the toxic dynamics. But what we'd gained was more valuable: authenticity, respect, and the possibility of real family connection. Later that night, alone in my grandmother's cottage after everyone had left, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, looking at the stars. My phone buzzed with a message from Richard Morrison. Board meeting approved your proposal for the global expansion. Congratulations, Diana. You're changing the industry. I smiled, feeling proud not because of external validation, but because I'd built this success on my own terms. I'd learned the hardest lesson of all: that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out, but frameworks that allow healthy relationships to develop. That family isn't defined by unconditional obligation, but by mutual respect and genuine care. The daughter who had stood alone at her award ceremony 18 months ago wouldn't recognize the woman I'd become: stronger, more confident, surrounded by people who valued her beyond what she could provide financially. I'd lost a family built on dysfunction and gained one built on honesty. As I sat there in the peace my grandmother had gifted me, I thought about the women who would receive scholarships from the Rose Hartwell Memorial Fund. Young women pursuing careers in pharmaceutical research who needed financial support and someone who believed in them. I'd give them what my family had failed to give me: recognition of their potential without expectation of repayment, support without strings attached, celebration of their achievements without diminishment. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to walk away from people who don't value you. And sometimes, if everyone does the work necessary, that walking away creates enough space for genuine connection to finally grow. I'd won my award. I'd kept my house. I'd built my career, but the real victory was simpler and more profound. I'd found myself. And in doing so, I'd created the possibility for my family to find themselves too. Not everyone gets a happy ending, but sometimes you get something better, an honest one. Looking back now, standing in my office at Morrison Pharmaceuticals as Chief Global Innovation Officer, I understand that family betrayal isn't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and consistent. Years of being overlooked wrapped in the language of love. My family didn't maliciously set out to hurt me. They simply prioritized their own needs so completely that mine became invisible. The irony is that by cutting them off financially, I gave them the greatest gift possible: the opportunity to grow. Tyler found his real talent. My mother learned self-sufficiency. Vanessa discovered humility. And I learned that my worth wasn't measured by what I could provide others, but by what I could build for myself. Have you ever felt undervalued by the people who should appreciate you most? Have you struggled with setting boundaries with family who expect endless support? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes sharing our stories helps others find the courage to write their own. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you found value in my story. Thank you for listening, and remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself and everyone involved.